really great to see so many of you actually back again. There are also some new faces, and for those of you who haven't been here before, I'll just say a little bit about myself. I'm 27 years old. I've been quite active in entrepreneurship. I've started 3 companies with 2 bankruptcies, so I've failed a lot as well. I'm a Venture Cup alumni. I participated in the finals back in 2008. And I'm a master from CBS, which was not entirely a waste of time, but it was quite boring, like I usually say. So I tried to spend most of my time on entrepreneurship instead. And yeah, I've made thousands of mistakes, and hopefully I've also learned a little bit from some of those mistakes. And that's really my main goal today, to try to give you some of those teachings that I got in the hard way. Besides my history, I'm your sparring partner at these workshops. So I'm pretty much the facilitator. I'll introduce the keynote that we have every time. For this event, we have Tina Thyssen, who's the co-founder and CEO of Everplaces. She's also done a lot of other things. What you will find here is very down-to-earth and tangible advices. I'm not a posh, glamorous guy. You won't hear any crazy theories. Hopefully not too fast speaking, like I'm not understanding what he says kind of thing. It's just down to earth, and the goal is to get you inspired and enthusiastic about entrepreneurship. For some of you, I also hope that you will submit a business plan for Venture Cup. It's great fun. There can also be some good money, 250,000 if you're really good, 50,000 if you win in your category, and then it's just a good way to learn pretty much. Make these sessions a dialogue, so ask me questions, also while I'm standing up here. It sounds a little formal with the mic and all that stuff, but just raise your hand and I'll answer the question while we are going along. Just a quick one for those of you who haven't been here before. What we've looked at so far was the characteristics of a good idea to begin with, and the idea development. We've looked at 2 different types of entrepreneurial schools, the just do it school and then the more scientific approach where you test a lot of the things that you do. We've looked at building an MVP. It sounds, again, a little formal, but it's pretty much just a prototype that is very minimum. So the very minimum prototype you can build off your idea, get it out there, get it tested, and get that done sooner rather than later. We've also looked at R, which are some metrics for pirates. It's a great way to understand some of all the data and the statistics that you get in when you kick out. The slides are on the DTU Creative page, web page, so go in and have a look at that if you're interested. Then we've learned a little bit on how to analyze and crunch all this data that you get in. And at the end of the day, we've also talked about that it's okay to make mistakes, and also to make lots of them, as long as you learn from it. Okay, this session we have today is by far the most important one of all. It's about creating an A-team. So if you want to participate in this, there's just this one session that is above anyone else that I can tell you about. The success of a startup is defined by the team. And what you want to do and to be good at is, of course, recruiting, but also establishing a great team in the beginning. I've made my little own cookbook, which is based on my experiences. And these are the things that I'll quickly run through. After the common mistakes, we will put Tina on as the keynote. But before that, we will look at infected people, why trust is important. We will look at bakers and eaters. And we will also talk a little bit about network, being the dumbest guy in the room, and then the common mistakes. After that, there's a little bit of exercises, so let's just see how the vibe is. If you guys want to sit 15 minutes and work a little bit on an exercise, we can do that. And I have some fun things that will hopefully challenge you in a cool way as well. We'll look at social media and hire a lot, fire a lot. Okay, so infected people. The one thing I can say about an A-team, and the most important characteristic of a person you would want to bring into your idea or your company, is for them to be infected. And by that I mean that they are passionate about your idea. More than a glamorous CV, a lot of experiences, a lot of skills, high grades, great education. The most important thing is for them to love what they do and what you do. So if you can feel on other people that they are not in love with the product or the service or whatever they do, then they are not the right people. This is the sole most important thing to remember. So basically being infected with what you do. That's the key thing. Besides that, there are many other things. And in many ways, a little startup is like a dysfunctional family. You go through a lot of stuff together. There's a lot of bumps on the road. There's a lot of challenges, and often it's also a very hard time. It's also fun, but it's quite hard. And because of all of this, what you want to look for in a person is trust. You need to be able to trust the person like you trust your family. It is pretty much a family. For trust, there are some things where you can kind of apply a little method to test if you are able to trust people. Often it's the thing you really feel in your stomach. But Guy Kawasaki, whom you may have heard about, he came up with this idea of bakers and eaters. And it's a little analogy on how you can kind of measure if a person is trustworthy and if a person is the right one. Now, an eater is the person that will look at a pie and then he will think, how can I get the biggest slice? And whatever other people get is a zero-sum game, meaning that if other people get a piece of the slice, that is this person's pretty much loss. That's not the right people to look for. The bakers, on the other hand, they will look at the pie and they will think about, how can we make more pies? How can we make bigger pies? And how can we make better pies? And often what you tend to find is that bakers are the trustworthy people and eaters are the not so trustworthy people. So when you sit with your pie, that being equity or workload or whatever you contribute with to a company, and you discuss, then look for a baker and not for an eater. And hopefully you found a trustworthy person as well. Default to yes is another great characteristic of an A player that you want to bring into your company. What I mean by this is that generally look for positivity. It's really hard creating a startup, and what you want to look for are people that have a positive attitude and people that really think about all the yeses instead of all the nos. So this, in addition, is also a great thing when it comes to networking. If you're out there and you think yes, and you think about how to help others instead of how they can help you, then often you will also find a team player that is great at networking. So basically adopting this mentality to say yes and to try to see opportunities is really great for any startup. And I think you guys should all look for that in your co-founders or in yourself for that matter. This is a little bit of a controversial thing. Do you guys know Jack from General Electric? He's a bit of an old guy today. Let's see some hands. Do you know him? You just read the book, yeah. It's actually a little hyped, but he does have some good points. Jack Welch, he was the CEO of General Electric from 1981 to 2001, and in that time he made General Electric the biggest and most wealthy company in the world. Today it's Apple, but back then it was GE. And in any way, I mean, you gotta have some skills to do that. And this guy has a lot of interesting ideas. One of them is that he wants to be the stupidest guy in the world, or the dumbest guy in the room. Sorry, not in the world, in the room. So basically he wants to be surrounded by people that are more skilled than him. He will only employ people that are better than himself, which is the whole idea of A players hiring A+ players, where B players would have a tendency to hire C players because they're a little more afraid. What this tells us is that we should always try to recruit and find people that are better than ourselves, and we should be humble in that regard. Because if you know everything, then you have a really big problem that you need to solve. Another thing in his book that I found to be useful in looking for the A-team and creating an A-team are the 4 E's. And really quick, what that is all about is finding people that are energetic, meaning that they have a lot of energy, they work hard, they spread that to other people. Pretty much, people that can carry a heavy burden. Also energizers that are able to project their energy onto others, so they can make a team work even harder than they would normally do. People that have edge, that are basically people that understand how to bend the company in the right direction, make the right strategic decisions, fire people that are not executing, and also hire people that are the right ones for the company. And then at the end, execution, which is the most important one of them all, at least according to Jack. You need to get things done. It comes a little bit back to show me the money. You can't only talk, like I'm doing now, for example. You actually need to show people that you can execute, that you can get things done. And it goes through all of these different E's. Okay, so final slide before Tina is a little bit on formalities. I've really burned my fingers here myself, so this is actually quite obvious, but still I would like to emphasize some of these things. Take the nasty equity discussion sooner rather than later. There will be a distribution of the shares in the company when you start out. And if you just start out without having discussed that, it may be a real big problem if you do well, but also if you do not so well. So find out how the equity is distributed. And it doesn't always need to be half and half if you're 2 people or 1/3 if you are 3 people. Responsibilities and job titles. After you've been active for half a year, who's going to be the CEO? That can also turn into a very nasty discussion. So take it sooner rather than later. Who's going to have responsibilities for the project management, for the finances? All these things, it's good to have those things settled before you actually really start out. A shareholder agreement is pretty much the policies of the company, the formal and legal policies. When do you sell? How many voting rights? How many shares do you need in order to sell? How much do you need to bring on a new shareholder that has equity? All these different things that can turn into, again, nasty discussions. Put that in a shareholder agreement and spend the money on a lawyer for those things, if you're really serious about your company. Wage, again, when money starts rolling, how much are we going to get? How much do we take for ourselves? How much do we give to others? These are all quite important things to have down and in place. Great communication. How do we communicate? What tools do we use? Again, super important. And then the manifesto is a little bit like the in-house policy on how things work. Basically, it's the corporate identity. How is the identity of this company? Again, a good thing, writing this down, having an understanding of that, looking through it, black and white on the paper, and also sharing this with new people that come in. Right, this